Welcome, everybody, from the Guggenheim Museum's Green Team. Hi, I'm Peter Brayshaw, the Director of the Fabrication Department at the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum.
My name is Megan Fontanella, and I'm Curator Modern Art and Provenance here at the Guggenheim, as well as a member of the Guggenheim's Green Team.
Hello, I'm Trevor Tyrrell, Senior Director of Museum Operations at the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexa Steiner, and I am the founder of Rute Sustainability Consulting. I've had the privilege to work with the team at the Guggenheim for the last 3 years, developing and implementing a strategic sustainability plan. We're excited today to share with you our most recent exhibition carbon study, the second one that we've done in partnership with Art to Acres. We want to share with you today how this work was done internally, the importance of collaboration, and how we plan to use what we've learned from this study to move forward and reduce carbon impacts from exhibition in the future.
The Guggenheim decided to take a step back and really better understand our environmental impact. We had an exhibition of the Chilean-born artist, poet, activist Cecile Vicuña on the horizon, and we decided this would be a really opportune moment for us to do a case study to identify our carbon emissions, track them, and then ultimately compensate for those emissions. Cecilia's own practice is very much embedded in this political activism, environmental concerns, and so it felt like a good partnership. I would say two things I'd love to highlight are communication and partnership with the artist, if it is a living artist that's the subject of this carbon study. For us, Cecile Vicuña felt like an obvious artist to partner with because so much of her practice is about environmental sustainability and political activism. Nonetheless, I think we underestimated that by messaging this study, we would be tying her identity, her brand, et cetera, to our carbon study. So really making sure she was on this journey with us, understood what we were doing and how we were really here to educate and inform and make better choices in the future, and making sure that our project, the rewilding of Chile, was really something that she could get behind. The pandemic definitely made some major challenges for us. It also offered, I think, some relief in terms of what we were, the scope of what we were capturing. So in other words, we knew people would be traveling less. We knew that folks were already looking to local loans of art, et cetera. We also had an artist, Cecile Vicuña, who, while Chilean-born, is based here in New York. Nonetheless, we had a co-curator who was based in South America. Another major facet of our carbon study, before we even got to the tracking and compensating part of the study, was messaging that we were in the midst of a study. So we did put language on the gallery wall during the Cecilia Vicuña exhibition. And this was very instrumental in messaging our concern as an institution for the climate crisis, in breaking the climate silence and educating folks around us, the visitors, the folks who come into our building. We really wanted to encourage others to challenge and change systems alongside us.
We partnered with Art to Acres, a nonprofit environmental organization focused on large-scale conservation. They focus on climate, indigenous people, and beta diversity. They are stewarding the conservation of 30.2 million acres of boreal and tropical forests with the support of artists and institutions. We work primarily with Dr. Haley Mellon on our project with support from Jody Roberts.
We gathered this data through a collaborative effort in the entire museum and in association with Art to Acres, who encouraged us to gather as much data as possible for this carbon study. We endeavored to create a spreadsheet that would gather all the data and of the various departments in the museum. The concept was to sort of start off at a macro level using the 3 scopes of carbon output, and scope 1 being direct, and then scope 2 and 3 being more indirect energy usage, and then developed various line items in our spreadsheet that related to those 3 scopes. Each department took those line items and internally developed a plan to input the data.
The spreadsheet included the travel of art and people, miles by air, car, and train, the shipping of exhibition materials, construction materials, as well as energy. And with energy, we actually focused on the specific floors of the rotunda that the exhibition was installed on.
For example, my department, the fabrication department, we utilize data from materials and items coming into our shop. We used the processing of those materials and the data that we collected from that, and also the shipping and delivery of those materials, and created our line items and data points for the spreadsheet. And maybe other departments like curatorial may do more flying and utilize energy in other ways.
This carbon study was very much reflective of a very specific case, the Cecilia Vicuña exhibition, and a very specific moment in time. Again, understanding those pandemic background. It is not reflective of the whole operations of the Guggenheim during this 3-month period. It's the walls that were built for Vicuña. It's the travel for Vicuña. It's the energy for the space that the Vicuña exhibition occupied. And that's something very important to remember. If we were to embark upon a holistic Guggenheim study, that would be far more comprehensive. I think what we wanted to do was really look at something that was manageable for staff to undertake and could educate us moving forward as we move to perhaps more ambitious studies.
So one of the most rewarding parts of this process has been the collaboration across all departments. We have many people volunteering their time and energy to learn more about how we can reduce our impacts to the environment. So working across the organization with all these partners has really been a collaborative exercise, and one that's been a model for how we can do other work in the museum as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, the departments involved in this project were curatorial, registrar, exhibition design, facilities, my department fabrication, graphic design, advancement, and of course, our wonderful and excellent sustainability team.
So one of the learnings that we've had is that as we've done this process, it's been somewhat of a retroactive process, having to go back to learn about the choices we made previously to understand the impact.
It was not embedded to our process from the get-go. As we all know, sometimes exhibitions are many years in the making. The Vicuña exhibition came onto the calendar quite late because of pandemic changes to our calendar, and we were often running. And the idea to use this as a case study for a carbon tracking study came on quite late.
Obviously, our hope is that when we move forward with this initiative, we will be making these decisions proactively, embedding this thought process into our planning stages. So it creates less work and makes more intelligent choices as they're happening.
Nonetheless, we were so delighted with how comprehensive the study was ultimately, that staff did go back, did take that extra effort and count, every trip, every nail, every wall, every bucket of paint, everything that went into the making of the Vicuña exhibition. So I think, again, another takeaway was really that ground up interest that we had so many dedicated green team members across the institution enabled us to pull something together with a very short runway.
Art to Acres used, the two calculators they used were Gallery Climate Coalition and Sustainability Tools in Culture Heritage, which is long for STITCH. The outcomes for the Cecilia Vicuña exhibition carbon study were relative emissions created from energy, road shipping, flights, and other forms of travel, and reported CO2 emissions from Cecilia Vicuña, spin, spin, trianguline.
Out of the carbon study, the two things that really came to the fore as the greatest in terms of our carbon emissions were travel and shipping. So the pandemic both exacerbated that and eased that for us in the terms of folks were naturally traveling less. So that's definitely a major asterisk to our study, that future carbon studies here at the museum might entail more travel of people and art. Nonetheless, I think it's really enabled us to take a step back and try to effectively adapt and innovate our practices in the future.
For me personally, I thought this process was very enlightening, just thinking about all of the scopes that are entailed in an exhibition. We get so used to seeing the end product in the museum that we forget that it really reflects a vast matrix of choices in terms of how individual departments are accomplishing their part of the process. So for me, this was an interesting way to unpack all of those decisions and think about them in terms of their impact on the environment.
It has taught me the importance of tracking all the various things that we do in the shop, and more importantly, how I relate and work with the other departments and be more sustainable in our shop in every way. It forced me to look at the details of what we're doing.
Something that was really important to me during this process and working with the Guggenheim team was allowing people to see and understand this work is approachable, and that understanding the carbon impacts of each of our jobs and of all of our work is possible.
Really what we wanted to do with this project was learn from it, was to take it back, to make better choices, to adapt, to innovate, to take this into our operations moving forward so that this is embedded into what we do at the Guggenheim. It's part and parcel of who we are. And I think we already start to see those conversations happening, which is really exciting, so that as exhibitions kick off, we're already thinking about how we can reuse walls, how we can reduce the number of loans, how we can travel less, maybe bring in virtual couriers, for instance. We are still maintaining our museum standards, but also layering in the environmental sustainability, reducing our negative impact on the environment is important to our institution. And this study is already changing the ways that we do things here. So these types of projects, carbon studies, won't make emissions disappear. We know that. But they're a way to take responsibility for the greenhouse gases that are difficult to cut and will help accelerate wider systemic change. So we are funding projects through our carbon study that have the most immediate strategic impact. And I just want to underscore that compensation plans should really be the last resort. We're foremost focused on reducing as much the carbon emissions as possible that we're responsible for. But when we are able to compensate for those carbon emissions that we can't control in some ways, then we are able to do so. The strategic climate funds for the Cecilia Vicuña carbon study went to a project called Rewilding Chile, which is where the artist Cecilia Vicuña is from. So for us, this was a wonderful opportunity to show our support for the artist, to have this project that did support rewilding conservation efforts in South America alongside our education efforts. Art 2 Acres and the Gallery Climate Coalition really recommend that projects cover three major areas where urgent action is needed. So first and foremost, keeping fossil fuels in the ground. Second, defending and expanding forests and wetlands. So that's what we're doing in supporting the Rewilding Chile project. And third, shifting to climate-friendly agriculture. So when we keep these three things top of mind, we're supporting climate action. The Green Team at the Guggenheim, of which I am a member, launched 2 years ago with the idea that in seeking buy-in across the institution from nearly every department, from construction to publications and onward, that we really have all voices at the table, that we are thinking across all the functions of the museum, whether it's an exhibition project, a public program, a publication, everything that we bring to life and push out to our visitors. And I think that conversation, that communication, that collaboration has been really key in creating some really important initiatives here at the museum around sustainability. We're starting to see real change. It's everything from a compost bin to this carbon study, that we're starting to see environmental sustainability embedded into everything that we do here at the Guggenheim.
What's next for the Green Team in this process is actually where it gets very exciting. We're trying to think of ways to change how exhibitions are planned and the way that the organization supports exhibitions, thinking about the carbon impact of each decision that goes into an exhibition. What we've been able to accomplish with our Green Team is creating a wide range of staff from all departments and all areas of the museum who are embedding this process and this thinking as they make each choice in the run-up to an exhibition. So trying to change systems based on getting people to incorporate this thought earlier in the process. Every exhibition at the Guggenheim is different, depending on where it is in the museum, the size of the exhibition, whether or not there are loans coming in from overseas, how much of a build-out is occurring. et cetera. So we have to learn how to scale this process accordingly. Not all exhibitions will be equal, but as we gather more data over time, we will be able to make determinations based on precedent in terms of how we're approaching each new exhibition in the Guggenheim Museum.
We are in the process of finalizing our report with Art to Acres. This has been such a rewarding partnership, and they've really been such incredible partners. And in taking this forward, we hope that external communications, you can go to our website, find more information about the study, that this can enable other institutions to learn from our study, to use it as a basis for their own studies. Really, the more information we can get out there for folks to then take forward to their own, whether you're a small institution or a large institution, we want to give you those tools.
So we will be doing more case studies in 2023 with the hope that by 2024, this process will be embedded into all exhibitions. For instance, one of the things that we will be working on this year is how to get more partners involved across the organization, including publications who had not previously been part of our studies.
You've heard it from my colleagues here today, but I think one of the main things we want to underscore is how critical collaboration is to a study such as this. The fact that we have such a robust green team at the Guggenheim with representatives from all departments means that when we come to the table to kick off an exhibition, we have the curator, the exhibition designer, the fabrications team, et cetera. We're all talking to one another and thinking ahead, thinking around sustainability concerns. And I think this study has just shown how effective we are when we come together to really think across a project like this, across the institution. I think most important things was that this came from the ground up. This was a project that, didn't come from senior leadership saying you have to do this carbon study, but it was really something that folks were invested in gathering that data, invested in learning from this study.
The team will be using and updating the spreadsheet for future exhibitions. This process is iterative. But the one thing that we'll make sure is that sustainability has a place at every conversation about exhibitions from the very beginning of the planning process. Thank you all for attending this talk today. These efforts are a work in progress, and there's so much more to learn. I know the Guggenheim team is very, very dedicated. I want to give a special shout out to the members of the Green team who were not represented in today's video, and everyone across the institution who's been supportive of this work. Thank you all so, so much, and we're excited to answer your questions today.